do a quick introduction to everyone here on the panel. So I'll give a quick introduction and then we'll go around for a little bit longer explanation about your perspective. So Liam Cronin from the RDI Hub in Clare. That is the end of the day. RDI Hub in Clare. We've got Edmond Conor from Adapt in Trinity. The Adapt Centre, I'm sorry guys, excuse me.
A precious person.
I hear you. Noted. I've got Conor from ServisBot. And I'm Clare Dillon, again from Open Ireland Network. And we are here to discuss the open source AI opportunity in Ireland. Because for everything we have heard up to today, and we've heard a lot about open source in general, we've heard a lot of folks who've been in this room about open source AI. So we're here to discuss, what does this all mean for Irish people, for Irish companies? And I'll start to just get your perspective. Maybe you can explain a little bit more about your organisation and your perspective on this. And I'll start with Liam, if that's all right. Sorry.
Sure.
Just to give an idea for the audience as to the perspective you're coming from and what you're going to be talking about.
Great. No, thanks, Clare. Can everyone hear me okay? So today's like a little bit for me like stepping back in time, because in my final role when I worked at Microsoft, I was the open source compete lead, and Clare was my manager at the time. And back then, like that was what, 15 years ago, open source at Microsoft was challenging or whatever like that. So it's great. And I came straight from Clare today with a customer meeting, so I realised I'm totally overdressed having a suit. I would definitely be jeans and a t-shirt before. Yeah, look, RDI Hub in Clare, we're a public-private partnership, digital innovation hub. Our whole objective is to support startups, scale-ups, SMEs, to scale and grow, creating new products and services and technology jobs. And Edmond would have been involved in this for no carbon, and some other people like Eric have seen this as well. I suppose for us, it's all around AI. So we've done a lot of work in AI. We're not just kind of jumping on the bandwagon in the last 12 months. We actually have run a summer school called the John McCarthy Summer School for the last 5 years, and it's in recognition of John McCarthy, who kind of coined the phrase artificial intelligence, because in a weird way, his father was born 5 miles from where the hub is down in Clare, so we've got that connection and we leveraged it as much as we can. So we've done the summer school on different topics like AI for sustainability, AI for tourism. We did it this year on AI for sport. But we're very much into promoting very open source. So we are not, we've now worked at Microsoft 25 years, we're not just pushing Microsoft, we're pushing OpenAI, we're pushing Linux, we're pushing, whatever, IBM. I know two guys from IBM aren't in the room anymore, but we're very much open to doing that. And I suppose what we've been doing the last 12 months, John was here, I learned from IDA, is we've been doing a lot of work on AI upskilling. So we've been doing a lot of work around, we run a masterclass the last Tuesday of each month, we run AI training sessions on lots of different technologies, and we was having to do consultancy with companies as well, very bespoke work or whatever like that. And I suppose my kind of sense on AI in particular in the last while is, a lot of companies are now asking like, where's the return on investment on AI? Like, where's the ROI in AI? And like we send people to the training courses, we bought the licenses if they bought them commercially, but there's a lot of investment in it and people are not seeing the return. And we see a lot of really interesting tools shown today, and what we're trying to focus on is case studies. And we're trying to get companies to come and give examples of where they're seeing productivity changes happening. And looking for 4 or 5 companies that are on a journey with us now, working on those case studies. So that's the key thing for me is those case studies and how we bring those forward. And then, as I said, I was the last presenter to mention about collaboration and open being collaboration.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. And I suppose, one of the nice, I just want to add to that, because I know that, I don't even know if it was mentioned here today, but one of the things that I've observed is that an awful lot of the folks that are doing open source in Ireland are not based in Dublin. Some of them are, but there's a lot of them that are actually spread throughout the country. And I think if there's anything that actually lends itself to a remote, locationless participation in innovation, open source is one of the things that allows you to do that. So I just want to add to that, because personally, I think there's a great draw to be, going over to the States and kind of go, come on over here and check out Clare down in Kerry. It's pretty beautiful. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So I'll pass it on. Edmond, would you like to give us your background?
Yeah, thanks very much. I'll just give you an intro, but actually talk about connected ecosystems that are in Dublin. I joined the Adapt Centre in Trinity College Dublin in 2019, hired by Liam, who was my boss. About 4 weeks later, Liam left, so I'm not sure exactly what that sort of said about either you, Liam, or about me, but great first impression. So yeah, it is a very connected ecosystem in Ireland, which is great in terms of even sort of the open source community. But the Adapt Centre is a research AI centre, and I do specify centre because there's a reason why, and I'll mention that in a minute. Our focus is particularly around AI sort of technologies and machine. So we have 3 parts in terms of that algorithmic side of the business, in terms of natural language processing and AI technologies, all that sort of core sort of underbelly in architecture in terms of building sort of tools. And then we have a whole sort of area of personalization in terms of how the user engages with the technologies, and then how that sort of applies in terms of data governance, in terms of how does that look, comply with regulations, and in terms of making sure the consent and all of that, and really how the user interacts with the technology in a sort of safe, trustworthy sort of way and a transparent way, which is some of the conversations we've been having earlier on today. But in terms of sort of, I suppose, open source, and really this is sort of coming back to the research centre. The strength of the Irish ecosystem is that the research ecosystem in Ireland is built around centres which are clusters of researchers from across the universities. So it is by its nature is a collaboration. So the ADAPT Centre, while it's led out of Trinity College Dublin, it encompasses about 8 universities. So we draw on the breadth of experts from computer science, but not predominantly. 10 years ago maybe. Now it's School of Business, School of Law, School of Ethics, Social Sciences, Humanities, Art. So there's a whole breadth of sort of collaboration that's going on, and we bring that then either at an academic level whereby they're focusing on sort of fundamental research, or they're applying that with industry. My part is facilitating industry engagement. So it's looking outwards in terms of industry, how to bring all that, as I call it, collective brain trust. Academics love that when I speak. You're the part of that collective brain trust. We'll bring that, we use that then, and I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest it's that collective brain trust which speaks to the open source community, that it's bigger than software. It is that open source culture, it's that sense of collaboration, and I think there is a strength in the Irish ecosystem from a research perspective that can help sort of drive that, and that's something Ireland Inc. can bring at an international level. We do that well here, which is not something that is really done comparably in Europe or in the States. That's the first point I would make.
Oh, and you've got more, so we'll come back to that.
Sorry.
But I do want to ask.
Do draw a line when I'm speaking, I will not shut up.
I do want to ask a question, because I think one of the most interesting things, particularly about the AI space in academia, is that, from talking to some of the folks in this area, I was told, look, like you wouldn't get published as a researcher in machine learning or AI. You won't get published unless you actually make your code available, because that's literally your research output. Like it's kind of, you can't say I've got this great AI model. Trust me. You have to actually show them what you built, and so therefore,
our metrics.
Yeah. So in that respect, I'm really interested. So the question actually, so if we take that as given, because we know therefore that AI researchers tend to have more open source research outputs. But I'm interested in about all these business and arts people that are coming in. What are they? Like, if the machine learning people are all saying, well, we have to do our outputs as open source because that's how we can get published, and you focus on the other disciplines coming in, are they getting that? Are they involved in that? Is there tension there?
There is tension. I think it's evolving because a lot of our industry partners have come to us first. Okay, leave aside the big sponsors in terms of Ericsson, Siemens, John Mulfels, and the Huawei's, and those are large companies that have open source ambassadors and they're very familiar with doing open source for as I always kind of say, various shades of grey, in terms of what we call deemed to be open source. But in terms of SMEs, Irish SMEs and public sector, I think there's various shades of trying to explain to them. Actually, a lot of tools that we will develop will be built on open source, whether it's the Python ecosystem that really sort of underpins anything we do with advanced machine learning. It's just otherwise we can't get projects done. So then there's a whole sort of question around actually trying to understand the sort of the licensing and all that. How does that break down to background IP, foreground IP? You've got to explain all that in terms of then industry partners. I think there's a good example. So I think it's a growing trend. We see this in the public sector services. I think I mentioned that to you earlier on. You can see Barry Lowry and Tony Chandler are great advocates and sponsors for open source. So for example, we always think in terms of I think we need more of those sort of case studies that are sort of being developed, sort of showcase. I can give you some examples of that later on if you wish. But that we're working with sort of the OGCIO in terms of machine translation around technologies around Irish English, which is great. So we always think of open source in terms of big challenges, big open source community to solve certain big issues. But actually sometimes it's big challenges, but a local community in terms of the low resource Irish English sort of translation technologies, and these are some of the areas we're helping public services build that Irish digital footprint using the application of really open source large language models and how they would apply comparably to a competitive offering that you would get off the shelf.
That's brilliant, and I think thinking about the the potential for research and for outputs in these areas of like niche speciality, I think is something that I think is really interesting. There's obviously an opportunity, I think, for Ireland. Like, you know, you don't have to be building a foundation model in order to be playing in this space. And I think, well, actually, and maybe this is an opportunity to come to Conor here to hear a little bit about what ServisBot are doing, because, you know, just thinking about the opportunities that exist for organisations, for researchers, for collaborations in Ireland. Maybe you can give us a little bit of background about what ServisBot do and your perspective on how AI can be leveraged and how open source AI can be leveraged in that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll start with you just talking about rural and semi-rural. I was laughing there recently. We have a new kind of LLM expert who lives, so I'm in Browne in West Cork. This person is in Rosscarbery in West Cork. The two of us are in the cafe beside Scally's famous super value in Clonagilty, surrounded by families as the two of us are discussing how best to fine-tune a small language model, and just going, it's pretty cool, isn't it? You know, why don't we pop down to Inchydoney and have a walk on the beach? So the rural thing, it's fantastic. I'm a huge fan of fibre everywhere. ServisBot. So ServisBot's interesting because it's AI from the start, but possibly not what you think of AI nowadays. So when the company started off, it was doing what's now called NLP, so natural language processing type AI. So very, very controlled responses to inputs, for want of a better description. So you can use for chatbots, web chatbots, automated handling of customer service via chatbots and so on. And they work very well, and we've tons of deployments out there, but they're quite limited in what they can do. They're quite limited in terms of the scope of what they can understand. So you train them on inputs, and if an input doesn't quite match, you know, the trained input, it doesn't match. Now you compare that to LLMs. An LLM will go, I absolutely understand it. You know, maybe you mightn't understand that when you say sound that you mean yes, and so somebody from Cork, you say I will yeah, you mean no. I'll go on in a second. But much better. So we, almost as soon as ChatGPT 3.5 came out, our team jumped on it immediately. They saw the value immediately. It was quite shocking. And they started building things. And interestingly, for me, some of the people building this stuff weren't the engineers. It was the business guys, because they had the tools available to them. They just went, I think we can do a better job with LLMs. And they were right. Like what they built was not the prettiest stuff in the world, but it worked, and they actually got some of it in early production. And we've ridden this wave. So we've gone from web chatbots with NLP to web chatbots with ChatGPT 2.5 to voice, huge amount of voice now. Still using LLMs in the background. So you've got text to speech, you've got speech to text, all of this stuff is happening, all using LLMs. But now it's gone beyond, you know, bots and chat, and now it's suddenly, agents, customer service agents want assistance, and they want access to all their documents and be able to semantically and intelligently search it. They want real-time transcription, they want real-time summarization, and all these extra things that we never thought, you know, were possible from, well, we just do bots. You know, we do chatbots, that's what we do, you can tell it's in the name. We've gone way beyond that. In terms of open source though, what's been really interesting for us is most of our customers are in the financial services industry. And a certain percentage of them are comfortable with, let's say, Azure OpenAI. A slightly smaller percentage of them are happy with OpenAI. In Europe, we don't actually use OpenAI because, you know, GDPR compliance and so on. So we're for most of our customers, we're using Azure OpenAI on European endpoints. But we have some customers who have categorically stated, banks in the US who have categorically stated, that stuff is not getting used by us. You know, at a CXO level, they've said absolutely no LLMs are being used. But then the conversation starts with, well, what if the LLM was yours and was tuned on your data and it was running on your infrastructure? And then the conversation changes. And that's actually where open source is coming in for us. I did a fun experiment today. I I had my laptop there, I was at one of the chats, and I took Llama 8B, so a small Llama model, on a provider called Together AI. It's very, very, very nice piece of software, very nice way of using all of these things. I took 40 megabytes, which isn't very big really, but 40 megabytes of questions and answers, generic financial questions and answers, so not customer specific. This is a public data set. And I uploaded it and I say train. And 11 minutes later, I had a private Llama running with my own endpoint, OpenAI compatible, and I could plug it into our infrastructure. So, I went from, and the data set wasn't actually right. So I got ChatGPT to write the code to convert the data set into the format I needed. So 30 minutes later, we have something usable and something valuable to financial services. So that's where our heads are at. Like, it's really ultra specific. We have customers who want very specific things and open source things.
And I suppose that speaks back to the point we were making earlier about the potential for Ireland, right? So if you're like going deep on a scenario, I mean, Saeed mentioned earlier as well in terms of like thinking about these kind of deep scenarios that you can actually build something that's specific for a given piece of the market, for addresses a particular piece of regulation, or some sort of actual scenario that makes it so they can't use generic stuff. So that's what I'm hearing that ServisBot are doing. Is that the core of the value proposition?
That's the way it's going. So, as I said, we're making lots of money with closed source LLMs, but the trajectory we're seeing is that. And I'll talk about two other areas that we're not in, but we talk about because they're so obvious to us. And had some conversations with people about it here today, actually. AgTech, it's Ireland, for the love of God. I was saying to somebody earlier on, if you look at the program for government, AI is mentioned 4 times in the program for government. 3 times it's artificial intelligence. I'll leave you to figure out what the 4th one is. They didn't join the dots. I just felt they should have joined the dots between the 2. But the second one, pharma. Some of the people I work with, they have spouses and so on working in pharma. Compliance, pharma, it's beyond huge what can be done there for paperwork, for everything in terms of automation.
All right, well, I'm hearing you talk, Conor. I'm getting very excited about all the AIs in that respect. But in terms of the broader opportunity in Ireland, I'm also thinking you seem to know a lot about this in terms of the models, the model types, which ones do what, which ones are capable. So I'm going to go back from a skills perspective now, just thinking about this broader opportunity in Ireland, right? So I'm guessing you have had an opportunity to learn about that because you've been dealing with the customers you're dealing with, right? So you're getting this kind of feedback from them in terms of what they will and won't use and all the rest of it. So I'm going to come back to the opportunity for other Irish businesses who are out there going, so, I mean, it's really hard even for someone who's trying to keep track of this to understand the amount of things coming out, how open they are, which ones would be applicable in which regulatory compliance scenario. It's almost impossible to make sense of it all, and with the speed and the pace, not to mind the complexities. So I'm going to ask this to, I suppose, all the panel, but I might start with you, Liam, just to say, you're doing education programs. It's already challenging. We heard earlier from Catherine, it's already challenging to get people to be willing to change and transform, particularly if you're a small business. So, what do we do? How do we join the dots in terms of education and skills to make sure that we get the information we need to be able to leverage those opportunities?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Linking back to the last presentation that Martin did, he had, it was a Horizon Europe project, and he mentioned a company in Italy that they were a steel fabricator, I think, and we went in and we spoke to 2 steel companies in Clare in Clare, Cal Engineering and Liebherr. So Cal Engineering is small Irish SME, Liebherr obviously big multinational. And we asked them what's their AI strategy, and they showed us the whiteboard, it was blank, and that was it. They didn't know where to get started. And that's the biggest challenge we're seeing with companies is, they just don't know where to get started, and it's just trying to help them on that journey. And then they're just worried about, as I said earlier on, about the return on investment. If we get our people skilled up, if we invest in licenses, whatever, we will get the return on investment. So I think what we're seeing is, you know, the tools are great, and like you mentioned loads of them there, but it's the case studies is the key thing, like, you know, and you know, we've all heard different areas, like we've heard that, you know, customer service is going to be affected, you know, it's going to be the debt of CFOs or whatever like that. It's not, like, what's going to happen is the chief financial officer's role is going to be very, very different going forward. You know, there'll be a lot more automation of the tasks they're doing and stuff like that. But even like, you probably know Rob Shaughnessy there from Galway, like he did a demo at our last masterclass, and he literally put 4 lines into a particular tool, and he had a website going live as we were there, like, and that was scary to me. And I said to him afterwards, you know, let's stop talking about the data of customer service agents. What about the data software developers? You know, and he was like, software developers is going to change to be data analysts. So everyone's role is going to change, and then you see reports coming out. I think there was a report last week about there's about 1 million people need to be trained in Ireland over the next year or whatever on AI. So there's a massive opportunity, and like Claire, you and I would have lived through the time of Microsoft when we were all moving to the cloud. And at the time, I was doing training lead, and you were DP lead, and like everyone was worried about this move to the cloud, where jobs go, or what's going to happen, and everyone was happy to sell a box product to move to the cloud. Within a year, you know, the cloud business had added on to the box product, and everyone was comfortable with it, and nobody was worried. Everyone's panicked at the start. Where's my data? If it's not at the end of the hallway, I'm really worried. If it's in Amsterdam or whatever. But in a year, people didn't really mind. So it's the same with AI. Like, there's just a massive opportunity for Ireland. And look, I think as well, if I think back to the whole cloud area, we probably didn't get it right around ethics and privacy and standards and stuff like that. I mean, some of the Microsoft and all of them kind of ran away with it a little bit. I think that's the big opportunity for us now here with AI, is like really, like we don't want to be over-regulated, but like I definitely think we need to get the ethics, the standards right, and be seen as a leader in that. But no, there's massive opportunity, and I think the biggest problem companies have, small startups, scale-ups, SMEs, is where to get started. And you know, what area do they want to automate? And then when they can get started on it, it's kind of bringing them on the journey. And I suppose what we're trying to provide in the RDI Hub is that end-to-end journey from, you know, start with a one-to-one consultation with, you know, your Reynolds that you worked with before, you know, then maybe bring people on the journey. But it's got to be very personalised. I don't think it's a one-fits-all.
And do you think this room, because like one of the things when I hear this, when if I hear consultations, I hear like I know, like I just don't know anyone who's up to speed, able to consult per se, to have a definite answer. I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity not just to be doing the consultations, because well, I get it, because if the consultation is about drawing out needs, then that's one thing. If it's about giving answers, then that's another thing, because like that's hard to do in an ever-changing space. And I wonder, is there an opportunity to do the connections between the people with the need? So because I hear you about the case studies, but I guess we're going to have to wait for a while for those to actually kind of fall out of the system, because they're not there yet. So, you know, is there an opportunity, I suppose, to if we hear about the people with similar needs, can we start like connecting them together? Because what we were talking about earlier was that if you do have a number of people with a similar need that's perhaps not differentiating, but just like, you know, oh geez, how can I just do this thing that we all have to do better? And it'd be better if we all figured it out together, because we're not, you know, competing in that space. We just need to get this done to make it regulatory compliant, whatever. And like, is there an opportunity there, do you think? And even not only between the companies that you're working with, but actually between those companies and say the researchers that Edmond's working with.
Yeah, I suppose I'd say 3 things on it. Like number one, like when we do like you're right, the consultation is about understanding needs. Like it's where's the biggest problem that you feel you can automate, that you can apply AI to. I suppose we're very clear with the consultations we do. We don't just go in and talk to the CTO. It's the whole C-suite, like, so it could be anywhere across. So like the initial consultation is with as many as the C-suite as possible. Then the second thing we try to do is link it up with a group of people in similar areas. So like we have a collaboration happening at the moment with our Carl Engineering, Lever, and Midland Steel. They're all in the steel space or whatever. They can all learn from each other and all go on the journey. And obviously, look, it's IP and they have to be kind of careful what they share, but they're willing to go on that journey. In the case study, Martin Engineering, we're on it, and go back to them on that one to link that in. And then the third element is, going back to my research days and adapt, like I do think there's a big opportunity to connect in with academia and try and leverage that and leverage the open source movement as well. So.
Yeah, so I think that we also heard earlier about the idea that if we are connecting in with the academic community, and like I understand your role is actually bridging between academia and small business, but we also heard the pace of change. I mean, like I'm just hearing what Conor did, right? Like, can you imagine, like the difference between and I just knocked one out of the back of the hall while the conference was on well, just relative to, you know, I'm doing a research project that's going to actually, you know, take years to actually complete, and funding project that takes me 6 months to actually put the, you know, thing in. So I'm just trying to think about those tensions and whether or not there's an opportunity to actually do something there.
Yeah, I think there is an opportunity there. I think the challenge we have is that, and it reminds me of Kathleen Lynch this morning, who was excellent in terms of that Catherine, wasn't that? In terms of that data game, in terms of consultation, in terms of talking to SMEs and you engage with them, you do go through that data and swipe right, swipe left. I wouldn't like this, I'm not quite sure. Swipe right, swipe left. But eventually you get it to the altar, and then you have that sort of engagement, you talk about licensing, you talk about what's involved in terms of the process. And sometimes then at that stage you kind of lose the effect in terms of actually, you know, bringing those SMEs and those sort of even larger industry on that journey, because they're just unsure. So there's an education there that needs to be done at a sort of at an Irish level, Ireland Inc. in terms of really sort of developing that. In terms of tensions, I think it is down to talent development as well. So I should say that on our industry engagements, while it's a lot of it is about sort of developing proofs of concept and delivering certain technology transfer to an industry partner, most predominantly is actually around teaching. It's about sort of training, and it's about education, and it's about sort of nurturing sort of development, talent development. So then at the end of the project, there's an opportunity for that talent then to, we don't like to lose them, but then go back into industry on the back of those sort of engagement, those sort of projects, so that understand that the pace of change is just phenomenal, you know, that you can do something like Conor would do in the back of an envelope. I can't, but he can. You know, so there is, I think it's an education piece, and it's an understanding for SMEs that it is moving at such a fast pace. The challenge, I think, at an Ireland Inc. level is that unless we realize those sort of challenges, there's a risk of being left behind. And I think there's a lag in innovation, particularly in terms of Ireland. I was at the National Health Summit yesterday at Croke Park, you know, and there is this sort of sense that you know, I suppose the enemy of good is perfection. Sometimes if we're waiting far too long to have a perfect product, it never gets done. And certainly with the health records in terms of Ireland, in terms of where we are, we're lagging behind in terms of other sort of ecosystems that are doing a far much more effective and efficient job than we just went and done it. And sometimes I think that's where the open source community is actually a great sort of ecosystem in terms of you build, you increment, you keep improving, and you hope then at some stage, you know, that the community itself will begin to sort of fine-tune the products that you're developing. So I think there's talent, there's education, and you know, would help with sort of some of those tensions. But talent development in Ireland is crucial in those specific skill sets, not only in AI, but actually in the open source community as well, because there's a different skill set around that in terms of evaluation of frameworks and testing, which is a little bit different, distinct as well, and we need to bridge that gap. For that, if we want to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, and I'm also just conscious that, like, you know, even as we've been talking about the organisations here and maybe, you know, structured programs and centres and things like that, I mean, I think there's still an opportunity even for individuals who haven't yet found their organisation or their centre or whatever. I was at a conference last week, and there was a woman on stage who is part of the Irish diaspora. And she was explaining how she had gone out and used a product called Instruction Lab, which is about modifying data sets on the existing open source model. But she has traced her roots back to Carrick-Cross. Now she's living in the States, and she's traced her roots back to Carrick-Cross. And she went and got a data set from the Irish government and has actually trained a model on it that actually helps the Carrick-Cross Genealogical Society in terms of Americans who want to trace their roots. And I'm like, I was listening to her and I was like, oh, that's amazing. Like, that's actually amazing, because, like, I mean, that's exactly the kind of thing you want to be enabled. And when I think about Ireland's opportunity, I suppose it's not even just in Ireland that we can leverage that opportunity, because if we kind of showcase, if we show the examples of what can be done, then you can actually leverage the entire diaspora to be helping us to figure out what's going on, and also to potentially be building things that help genealogical societies in Carrick-Cross or whatever the local is. But anyway, I'm going to also now come to you, Conor, because I know you've been involved in the open source community for a very long time, and we had a bit of a chat actually when we were doing some of the prep of this about things like the DeepSeek model coming out and things like that. And so I'm just curious if you think about it now, not from that organisational perspective, because we're talking about talent development, and one of the key things around that is experimentation. And I suppose that's what I thought of. That's what prompted the whole Carrick-Cross idea. But if you tell me about how we can encourage individuals that are outside these systems and centres and all the rest of it to actually, in Ireland, to actually take a grip of these kind of technologies and actually start learning about them.
That's a very, very broad question.
I've only got 2 minutes.
To be honest, like the reason I loved open source from the very start was I was in a company called S3. There you go, selling on software systems, and I was given a project to run. And I talked to I was very junior, and I talked to one of the senior engineers. I said, I need something to do version control. And he goes, well, what you need is blah, blah, blah. I said, but that's not on our machines. He says, you just download it, you just compile it, it's open source. And that was the moment of, aha. Then, I am empowered now to do whatever the hell I want. And that has continued, like that was 1992, 1993. That has continued through. It's this ability, I'm going to use a very inappropriate analogy here, because it popped into my head. It popped into my head earlier, and I actually Googled, I get the quote wrong, but it was Full Metal Jacket, and it's amazing what a motivated Marine with a rifle can achieve. And it's the same with open source. Motivated individual can just, all you need is like the worst laptop in the world, and you can do these things. So one of the things I did recently, again, fun, mostly fun, like there was a serious aspect to it, was what can I do locally? So what can I do not cloud? What can I do almost not connected to the internet? Partially connected to the internet. So genuinely, the company gave little vouchers at Christmas, little one for all type vouchers. So I bought an external GPU adapter, I bought a power supply, and I bought a genuinely second-hand GPU off eBay. Wired them together, plugged them into my laptop, and I was then running local models like Llama, but much bigger than you can run on a laptop, for the crack. I'll say for the crack initially. But actually, I had a serious point behind it, and this is just an example of anybody could do what I do. Now, genuinely, anybody with ChatGPT could do what I do. So about 2 years ago, I kicked off an open data project, not necessarily, well, it was open source as well, the focus was open data, and it was to make the EPA leak data more accessible to environmentalists. Somebody asked me to do it. I was on a week off, so I said, fine, I'll do that. Mostly ChatGPT. I didn't really write, ChatGPT wrote most of the code, and that's now available. So every night it goes, it scrapes the entire EPA website, it generates some updates to say, over the last 24 hours, these are the following updates that happened. The problem is, and this has been running successfully a couple of years, it's used by environmentalists, it's great, I'm very pleased with it. The problem is all of the submissions, you think other PDFs will off the shelf, just completely off the shelf.
This will happen at Badminton Hub.
Banned.
I'm sorry, I don't know if that is, sorry. But I mean, this is the point, right? That really what I think some of this actually enables is anyone to do whatever can be done anywhere can be done from anywhere.
And it's genuine, and this is how I open most tabs on ChatGPT. How do I? Just that. How do I do the following? And I just describe it in English, and I go, can I do that in Python? And I go, sure, here's the code.
So that's where we're at. So having had that discussion about all of these things, I'm going to open it up to the floor now to see if folks want to ask a question. And we have one down the back, and then one here.
Just a quick one. Have you checked if the PDFs are readable by JAWS software for visually impaired users? So most PDFs have to be explicitly blocked to read the characters, so most are open. So if you use visually impaired software like JAWS, it can actually read and lift out the text for you.
I haven't, but I'll try that this weekend.
This is a learning event happening right here with the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I was just using easy OCR, but that's
Should we stay afterwards? We can
And yeah, you can say after this can go on, but we'll go here and then to Tony.
Question for Edmond. I just started as an intern in eSort, funded by that center, so I'm used to
that's a very good point, yeah.
I'm new, so this might be completely wrong question, but from what I know, like the app center is mostly or fully funded by the government. So with that in mind, in relation to everything in today's talks about being open source and private companies and institutions being open source, working open source, how does a government funded or regulated program like that develop the legislation like
Well, the first thing is actually it's only a third funded by government, so it's funded by industry, it's funded by European funding, and it's funded at an Irish level as well. So there's a mix, there's a triplex in terms of funding investment. So, but you're right to some degree. But just before I go on to that point in terms of e-store, it's worth making that point because I saw the banner outside on the floor and actually talk about public sector services in terms of that, in terms of open source, in terms of large language models, and that sort of machine translation in terms of Irish English. A lot of it does depend on a data repository in terms of good data sort of sets in order to be able to sort of fine-tune those sort of models. Without it, it wouldn't exist. And actually, eStore, which is run out of DCU. Sorry, what's your first name? Ada, so it's good to meet you. Which is out DCU is actually an open source community data set whereby actually public service administrators load up the data into the eStore platform. It's sort of managed, it's curated, it's labeled and into a machine readable format, and then from that it is actually delivered back into the open source community again for something like the localization of machine translation technology. So it's run by Adapt out of DCU, so it's a great platform. So it's worth a plug. It's eStore.ie, STOR, if you've any interest in that subject area. In terms of compliance, yes, absolutely. But what we're trying to do is, and I think it's back to the idea of common interest, is that there's a realization around compliance and regulation. To Liam's point, you cannot just sort of solve those problems yourself. It is a big challenge. One can talk about regulation in Europe in terms of they're over-regulated, under-regulated. I think to some degree you might look at the EU AI Act as actually creating sort of seamless it's not seamless yet, but creating a sort of a standard that we can all adhere to that would actually sort of break down some of those sort of problems in sort of regulation. But actually, in terms of common interest, actually industry have funded actually just recently, which we just got a project we completed in terms of wanting to create tools and frameworks around compliance. And so we built sort of compliance sort of frameworks and to look at the EU AI Act to standardize terms and concepts in terms of what's happening at that regulation, how you map that to international standards, and then how you map that back into management information systems at a company level. So then if you're looking at sort of consent and you're trying to transfer or share knowledge within an organization, big organizations, small organizations, you can use these sort of interfaces to actually sort of help guide and understand and break down the complexity of that, provide some of those questions, those challenges that you're talking about. So, and that is an interesting project. It was just one that we completed recently, backed by industry, but again, it was a common interest. You can't solve it yourself, so let's sort of fund this by industry. We developed an open source sort of framework, open source tools, and we deliver back into the community as open source sort of tools. It's TAIR, T-A-I-R. You'll find it within App Center if you want to sort of find a bit more information around that. But that is a good, I suppose, opportunity for those big problems and regulation compliance, and we can talk about that in terms of vis-a-vis Europe and America. So there is a challenge there. Some sort of US companies would say, well, innovation is a challenge in Europe because of some of these over-regulations. It's more a question of, I think, simplifying the regulations rather than deregulating. So I think that's, if you can standardize it, simplify it, it's much more effective at a sort of at an industry level rather than it being used as sort of a bargaining chip in terms of, well, I'm going to get sort of fined, so I should do X, Y, and Z, or it's a counterintuitive to innovation. I think it's much more about simplifying the ecosystem in terms of regulation.
I think it also actually is even an opportunity. I was at a competitiveness panel when I was over in Europe, and some of those companies were actually saying, well, look, if there are people who are building this work, there is an actual business opportunity to actually take that work and actually now make it compliant.
I think you're right. I think there's a great opportunity for Irish startups to actually, get involved, and for startups getting involved in regulatory compliance. It's a huge opportunity.
Very, very valuable work, if not considered to be the sexy crack work, but it is very valuable work. So Tony, do you want to?
Yes, sorry, Tony Shannon, I'm working within government, and question, it kind of extends Conor's analogy of what a small person or one person can do with the right tech. And my question is, Clare, taking where this conversation goes, where we end up with a community of practice around AI, what can a small country like Ireland do to take advantage of the shift now that we're seeing around open source AI, to instead of everybody being lost in the noise around lots of stuff around AI, to focus on, let's say, 4 key areas where we become expert in. And if I put to you that within government we're seeing needs around search, indexing, summarization and translation, would those be recognizable to people like yourselves as something that if we were to take the tools we have within our grasp and become expert in those areas of AI, that we can begin to lead.
So I'm just going to repeat those and see if I got them right, and also with the camera. So the question is, if we did want to focus in on core competencies around AI, and it's search, indexing, summarization, and translation.
Yeah,
were the
just as
suggestions.
examples of the science.
I'll just touch on that because we're right in that space. These are actually mostly, I'll say, solved problems. Now, in terms of specific implementations for specific scenarios, everything's different. But in financial services in the States for some of our customers, and this isn't specifically promoting us, but it just talks to the technology. We have a system we're about to roll out that it's actually real-time transcription of conversations, but in 2 languages simultaneously, so Spanish and English at the same time, and summarization. But then layered on top of that is multi-thousand document knowledge sources for the agents that they're able to search across the entire corpus and rate it, so that experienced agents can rank up, more better results for the less experienced agents. Now this is kind of context centered stuff, but the actual core tech in terms of search and indexing and all of that, that's all available now. But to your point, there is the problem of, like, I do it, I know we were all kind of joking earlier on about it as well. You wake up every morning and, what the hell happened while I was asleep? But actually, the core stuff doesn't, being able to do implementations doesn't change from day to day. Meta released Llama 3 quite a while ago, and you can say, oh, 3.2 is better than 3.1 and so on. But actually, if you focus on a single thing, build a solution, that will keep working for quite a long time and work well for you. Documents in particular, I was talking about the leak data and OCR, but that's stock technology. It's actually been around for a very long time. So I think there's an opportunity there for across government, local government, in general, to leverage this tech and relatively quickly and in a shared way. I think
Thank you. Now, actually, or do you want to go in really quick now, because we want to get one more question.
Yeah, no,
Already over.
No, just not the four. There's one in particular I would call out is the translation one, because like when I started at Microsoft in 1990, if you wanted to get something translated, you had to get it localized. You had to get somebody nationally to come across. I remember we were working on Windows 3.0 on Sweden. Oscar was our translator. We had to queue up to get him to do it. And then over time, machine translation came in and we started using it, but it wasn't very accurate and stuff like that. And then I joined the Adapt Centre, and they had a lot of expertise in machine translation, and we're working really closely with DAG and others. And now I just go into a browser and I type in a word, and it appears in Swedish or Irish or whatever. So I think translation is a great example of where it's gone from having a physical national alongside you to translate whatever 25, 30 years ago, to now just going into a browser and happening. So I'd love to have translation as one of those items here.
Just
Excellent.
one thought.
Very quick.
The one thing I think that we do, and it is happening, and I know I mentioned this earlier on to Tony, is that we do overcomplicate, so we have to date overcomplicated the network in Ireland, you know what I mean? So who do you go to talk to? Who do you use as a benchmark? Well, like talk to maybe 10 different sort of centres or different sort of academic institutions or different sort of sponsors or ambassadors do what we do. So we do need to really have a focus on simplifying the ecosystem here. I haven't joined up thinking it is happening. There is, in terms of the research ecosystem, there is a sort of transformation where there's simplifying the system from about 25 centres down to about 8 or 9, which is going to happen over the next 12 to 18 months. So that's a good thing, but I think we need to continue on that. So that, for example, if Tony or Barry or an SME has a question, if there's one benchmark you come and talk to, and it's part of the community practice within at the public sector level and at an SME level. So we really need to engage with the SME level too, much more effectively, much more efficiently, all from all corners of the country that are not just bigger, larger SMEs, but smaller SMEs.
And I agree with the simplification. I just don't want to, make the simplification mean that there's not enough conversations going on, because this is a complex problem.
Yeah, it is complex. Yeah.
But one last question, very quickly now.
Yeah, final question for Liam. You mentioned some of the opportunities for Ireland. What do you see as the constraints in terms of us?
Very good question.
Yeah, I think even Edward kind of hit on it there. Like we're a small nation, and I think the biggest constraint is we're not joined up thinking enough, like, and connected enough, you know. And like over the last couple of years, like you've seen it through the whole startup engagement, you know, like whether you're in Kerry, Galway, Donegal, Dublin, Wexford, we're all collaborating and working closely together. So I think that's something we need to do more on, is just really collaborate more around the whole AI opportunity. I suppose, you know, you kind of mentioned a little bit there about the EU AI Act. I mean, I think it's important to have regulation, but I hope we don't over-regulate it and we don't kind of paralyze ourselves a little bit. You know, there's the old adage of America innovates, Europe regulates, and China imitates or whatever. I was seeing a fair bit of that actually happening in the last week or two. So we just need to be careful that the regulation is there, and you know, as I said earlier on, we take an opportunity of it, but it doesn't kind of constrain us or whatever. And I do think even tapping into academia is really important. I mean, it's something I'm really passionate about, the whole industry-academia connection, and you want to hear this one, but like we had, there's a European Digital Innovation Hub in UCD called CEDAR, and they came to Clare on Tuesday, the CEO, John Lonsdale, and he did 5 meetings, and he could have been there for the rest of the day. There was a queue like outside the door willing to talk to him, but he just opened people's minds, you know, and the sense of that this guy was coming from Dublin to Kerry to talk and to collaborate and work, and obviously we've done the same with Adapt and Insight and others as well. So it's just that kind of joined up thinking and working together and connecting industry and academia, I think is key, and yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, I am going to have to stop because we actually have to go up to the reception, which I know everyone will hopefully get to, or go to wherever they're going.
Is that an open source? No.
Yeah, but I will say, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone on the panel today. So thank you, Liam, thank you, Edmond, thank you, Conor, and thank you to all of you for coming along with us. But before we finally wrap up, now I did have slides, but I'm not even going to go there because we turned off the projector, and really that's beyond me to get back working again. So what I will say is that I hope you enjoyed today. One of the reasons we came along today was to kind of start conversations, not really to get to the answers, because to be honest, we don't have enough time for that. But I think what we do know now are that there are themes that have come out from today that I think are ripe for looking at further and coming together and to collaborate more across these different centres, organisations, types, backgrounds, and wherever people are coming from, so that we can actually get to the key of what will make Ireland different in this area. Because I mean, my perspective on this is that we do have to pick areas where we're going to be better, I suppose, rather than trying to imitate everyone else as well. So I don't know, that's an open question, but I'm looking forward to actually working through it with everyone. So if you are interested in actually continuing the discussion, we would hopefully ask you to sign up to Open Ireland Network. We are continuing the conversation from a government perspective, from an academic perspective, from a business perspective, and then from this idea of actually working between them. So I think we're looking for opportunities to actually connect these audiences. We'll send around an email after the event, and we hope that you will join up if you haven't already, and we're looking forward to talking to you some more afterwards. Now we have a reception after this, and before I let you all go to that, and hopefully you will be able to stay around for a little while to continue the conversation, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's been involved in this event. You have no idea how much work goes into doing something like this, and a lot of people dedicate a lot of personal time to do it. So you know, some people are built on fantastic.
Well done, you.
No, well, I mean, it was not just me. It was well done to everyone. And I just want to say a personal thank you to everyone, because I think it's really a great example of community, and just goes to show you that not all contributions are counted. So thank you all for that, and please enjoy the reception, and hopefully you have a good day. Thank you all very much.